Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul, and I am with...
Amata / Amy, whatever you want to call me, I don't really mind.
I could think of other things.
Stick with one of those two, please, is what I will say.
Okay, so it's been a while since we've done a podcast.
Yeah, it has been a while. We've just been very, very busy, is the thing.
Yeah, with your moving and my constantly going to the United States and just general stuff and things. Oh, and also there's... I keep forgetting to say to everyone, but there's also going to be another podcast with a large group of individuals who I went to GDC with, and we're going to be giving like our overall thoughts and opinions. That will be coming up pretty soon.
Okay, that sounds pretty interesting, but I guess we should start with what games we've both been playing, because it has been a while.
Okay, I'm going to let you go first.
Well, I'm going to start with the game that I'm not currently playing, because I think I'm going to be talking about that for a while. But I did also play the Resident Evil 2 remake, or Leon's campaign. I still haven't done Claire's campaign. I still haven't done Leon B either. But Leon A, I really, really liked, actually. You could tell they put a ton of work into it. And even though it's obviously a different perspective to the original, I still think it held the spirit of it. What do you think?
Well, obviously I've completed it with Leon A, Claire B, and pretty far through Claire A.
Right.
So I really like the game. I didn't find it particularly horror, but I did think it was a really good game overall. If I had to level a criticism at the game, it would be that I don't think there's enough difference between Claire B and, say, Leon A. I think that there needs to be... Like, for example, I'm not going to spoil it for anyone, because I obviously don't want to do that for those who haven't gotten a chance to play it. But basically, you need to redo stuff with Claire that essentially you've just done as Leon, which doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I was kind of bothered by that as well, but I can understand why they did it, because it would have been a nightmare to basically have areas that you can only access as Claire, as Leon, and then obviously, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can see why they did that. To be honest, as much as it would have been nice to not basically do things that I know I did as Leon, like I get the same keys that he got, open the same doors with those keys, that sort of stuff.
I think it's more the puzzles that got me.
Yeah, and the puzzles are the same as well. So I get it would have been annoying to have multiple puzzles.
I think, to be honest, it was more development time.
Well, that's what I mean, from a design perspective, a time perspective, and from a player perspective as well. But obviously it didn't make actual sense.
The other thing as well is that I thought Mr. X was ridiculously easy to kind of deal with. Like, he was annoying, but only in as far as he came at annoying times. But to deal with, he was super easy to avoid. And I felt after the first couple of encounters, I was just like, "Oh, you again? Really?"
Yeah, I mean, he was scary at first, I will admit, but he went from being scary to really, really annoying in the space of about 15 minutes.
But my personal opinion is it is easily one of my favourite games that I've played over the past couple of years. Aside from that, I think the graphics are incredible. I think that the gameplay is awesome. I think it does have a lot of replayability.
Absolutely, yeah.
And overall, I think that the voice acting and just overall, how can I put it? The overall presentation of the game is amazing. And for those who don't know, Resident Evil 1 and then Code Veronica and then Resident Evil 2 are my order of favourite Resident Evils.
Right.
But I really love Resident Evil 2 Remake, and I think Capcom done an amazing job.
Yeah, no, I can't help but agree. I mean, it's true to the original while being an improvement on it, and I really like the changes that they did make. Yeah, and I actually really like the Ada section as well, Neon A. I thought that was really cool.
That was pretty top.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. And I did like how they made Mr. X more interesting. As much as he was really annoying, in the original, he only showed up at scripted points, and if you knew it was coming, it lost all surprise. It was like, oh, okay, he's going to bust through the wall at this point, appear at this point, that sort of stuff. With him just sort of appearing just to annoy you is obviously, he genuinely was a hindrance, which is obviously his purpose. So, I can see why they made the change that they did with him.
And you've been playing something else, right?
Yes, I've been playing Sekiro Shadows Die Twice a lot, to the point where I'm at the end of the Immortal Severance ending, and for anyone who's played the game, they'll know what I mean. So it's really, really good. I know you haven't got around to playing it, so I'm not going to say spoilery stuff.
Yeah, plus as well the audience probably kill you.
Yeah, plus, it's only been out a couple of weeks. People might have got a chance to play it yet. People might be playing it obsessively as I have, that sort of stuff.
Yes. Okay, just smashing your face against the boss until it dies.
Yeah, I came into a pretty annoying ramp, just sticking point, shall I say. But it's really, really good. I mean, it's obviously got influences from Dark Souls and Bloodborne, obviously.
How many controllers have you broken so far?
Zero controllers. I only have the one controller, so I'm going to be nice to it, okay?
Okay.
I'm not including my PS4 controllers, but still. Anywho, what's the saying? Completely lost my train of thought. Throw me off. Oh, yeah. But it's its own game. Absolutely its own game. I actually have used the stealth mechanics more than I thought I would. I thought I would just run through and just murder everything, but the game actually doesn't want you to do that. There's one thing I will say as a criticism: it's very rigid in how it wants to be played. Whereas Dark Souls, you can pretty much play it however you want, within reason, obviously. But Sekiro is just no, you have to parry. Welcome to Parry Town, and if you can't get quite used to it, then
sucks to be you.
Yeah, basically. But I will say, I don't know if the parries just make more sense in my head or they're more generous, maybe both. But I've actually got a pretty good hang of it now, I will say. So, yeah, I'm loving it. I will say, I think you'll like it as well.
I have been playing DMC.
How's that? I haven't had a chance to play it yet.
I haven't gotten super far, but thus far, I think it's the best DMC in terms of my impression of it since the original.
Okay.
And I think there are a couple of criticisms I have, but I'm not ready to announce those criticisms yet because I've not played enough of the game to really say that it's a big deal in the long run. But I think overall, the game just plays amazingly. And I think that it feels natural. The original DMC felt incredible to me back in the days of the PlayStation 2.
Yeah.
And this is no different. It just feels like a quality game. And it doesn't feel like it's too hard. It doesn't feel like, oh, I've died here because the game screwed me. It feels like, yeah, I kind of deserve that.
Yeah, well, that's always good. I mean, it's on my list to play after Sekiro, basically. So once I've got past the final boss, which could probably take me about 10 years at the rate it's going at the minute, I'm going to play DMC5.
Are you getting beaten at the moment?
Yeah, he's no joke. He's genuinely no joke, especially with the ending I've gone. I could have made my life easier and cut the game short by a couple of hours, but I didn't want to do that, so here we are.
Okay.
Anyway, let's move on to topics, because
we have
a few. Yeah. So, I guess we should talk about the PS5, as we've heard quite a bit of rumours about that. Obviously...
And the Xbox as well.
Yeah, Xbox Scarlett, but more recently, the PS5 has kind of been the one in the limelight.
It's rather interesting, though, about because there was, I think, something I didn't actually cover in terms of news with the Xbox.
Okay.
There was a leak. I don't remember the chap who leaked it, but it's basically regarding E3. Right. And the reason I didn't cover it is because, well, I just forgot.
I mean, I can't really say much to that. I mean, I know I've done that in the past. I've been like, yeah, I'll cover that another day. I've got time today, and then it just goes straight up my head.
So basically, the gist of the leak is that we're going to see an announcement of some description of the next generation systems, which is about as surprising to me as saying hitting a wall hurts.
Yeah.
But we're also going to see some gameplay, or at least a gameplay teaser of the next Gears of War. And supposedly it's going to have 4-player co-op.
Okay.
Which, for the story, obviously.
Yeah.
And from what I hear, it's pretty darn amazing. We're going to see some new titles from their studios they've acquired, including Ninja Theory. And furthermore, we're just overall going to see a very strong showing from Microsoft.
Well, it's their E3 to win because Sony's not going to be there.
Yeah.
And the only ones who are really going to be any sort of competition at all is probably Nintendo, and they don't do a proper conference. They obviously do the Direct.
Yeah. And
unless they turn up with Metroid 4 or whatever, I don't think...
Apparently that got reset in development.
Yeah,
it got restarted.
That. Yeah, so I think, to be honest, it's Microsoft's E3. I mean, obviously... Square Enix could turn up with something amazing or whatever, but EA is always a joke, so it's probably going to be Microsoft's year, to be honest.
So, with the specs, obviously both systems are almost certainly using AMD hardware.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of questions. The primary question, of course, is which one is more powerful? And the answer to that is,
I was going to say, we don't know. I mean, with all the rumours and stuff we've heard, it's been pretty consistent that it's going to be Navi, right? Navi 10.
Well, see, here's the interesting thing. This is the bit that I honestly want to hear more about.
Okay.
So, Forbes and several other websites reported that Navi was being utilised in the PlayStation 5 and AMD got a disbursement from Sony to help fund the development of Navi.
Yeah.
That's basically confirmed from so many different sources.
Yeah, okay.
So, I've got a question for you.
Right.
Okay, you're Microsoft. You come up to me and say, hey, gee, that Navi looks kind of nice, right? And I, as Sony, say, hey, I helped fund that. Of course you can utilise the architecture. So that makes me wonder if another rumour I've heard is true. Now, this is very... what's the word I'm looking for?
Unconfirmed?
Yes. But I've heard a couple of theories and also some whispers, but nowhere near enough confirmed for me to just report it in a news video.
Okay.
That the Navi GPU inside the Xbox is actually different to that of the PlayStation 5. And the thing I heard is basically it's going to be closer to the next-gen GPU from...
so Microsoft's going to get the better end of the deal?
That's one theory, and that's why they were going to have more advanced ray tracing in the Xbox system. But...
I mean, I know I've definitely heard somewhere before, a long time ago now, that there's going to be two different versions of it, one for Sony, one for Microsoft, which would make perfect sense because obviously Sony's not going to want what they basically paid for Microsoft to benefit from that. That makes perfect sense.
Now, obviously, we heard from a couple of sources that Navi, next generation Navi, the big Navi 20, is going to have ray tracing.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I've heard from someone else that the smaller Navi definitely does not have ray tracing.
Yeah, which would make sense.
And I've also heard that there is a professional Navi that's coming, which is obviously for prosumers.
Yeah.
But almost certainly the next generation GPU, Arcturus, although that's not the official name, does support ray tracing. So there's obviously this point where AMD introduced it into the architecture. As for the consoles, 24 gigabytes of RAM, well, I mean, let's face it, the current Xbox One X has 12 gigabytes.
Yeah.
So 12 gigabytes of memory for next generation is not enough. Obviously, It depends. It's like the Three Walls and the Simpsons Orphanage. You know, it's just not enough. And so I suspect that we're going to have this, you know, thing where 24 gigabytes of RAM is probably going to make sense, depending on OS reserves. With the PlayStation 5, supposedly, you've got 4 gigabytes or something like that of DDR4 that's allocated to system reserve. But, yeah, I think the next generation consoles are going to be interesting from a PC perspective because let's say that it's roughly on par with the performance of an RTX 2070 or something like that. Or even a 2080. It doesn't really matter for the sake of this video. I think it's going to tempt a lot of people for about a year over to gaming on console because people are so frustrated right now with basically coughing up $1,000 plus for an RTX 2080 or 2080 Ti. And this is one of the reasons that I am very curious to see what happens with Navi, and I'm very curious to see what Intel do with Intel Xe.
Yeah.
I'm hoping we can lower the prices of GPUs because I think at the moment it's just prohibitive.
It is very expensive. I mean, I think a lot of people are excited to see what AMD are up to because they do tend to be a bit more affordable with their GPUs. I mean, it's still not cheap by any means, but not RTX 2080 Ti levels of expensive.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see what Navi is and obviously how we see it in the consoles as well. But yeah, we might see PC gamers buy a PS5 or Xbox Scarlett or whatever it ends up being called just because it's more affordable and is actually giving them decent 4K gaming. I mean, I've said this multiple times in multiple videos, but I really wish that they'd worry more about the frame rate rather than the resolution.
Well, that's supposedly what Phil Spencer's working on for the next generation Xbox.
And if he's doing that, then brilliant. They've got my money if that's the case.
That's why the CPUs... See, on the PS4, there was a serious imbalance. Basically, it was crippled by the CPU. It's a 1.6 gigahertz Jaguar with 6 cores allocated to games. Although Sony did change that to 6.5-ish cores allocated to games if developers tapped into it. But the thing is, the IPC, the amount of instructions it would perform per clock, along with the low clock speed, it basically meant that a lot of stuff had to be leveraged onto compute. And just generally speaking, the CPU cores were not that fast. So assuming we see the CPUs clocked at a modest speed of even 3 gigahertz, which is more than capable for Zen 2 8-core processor, and we see the high IPC gains as well, I do suspect that we are going to see a very large improvement in performance. Mm-hmm. Whether we're going to see 60 FPS locked, obviously at the end of the day it's down to developers on how they choose to use the performance.
Yeah, I mean, I would be fine just to see more developers do what we saw, like, Tomb Raider do, where you can choose which one you want. That's fine. I'm actually completely okay with that, but whether or not we'll see that...
You know why a lot of the time they didn't do that, though?
No.
Because it was down to the CPU. And so the CPU just wasn't capable of rendering the rest of the game. So it wasn't the GPU that was the limiting factor on the 60 FPS. It literally was the CPU.
I mean, speaking of the CPU, like one of the rumours that I saw recently was, of course, that it's going to be... Well, sorry, not the CPU, sorry. The clock speed of Navi is going to be 1.8 gigahertz at about 3-ish for the CPU. So whether or not that ends up being true...
It makes sense, because if you think about it logically, if you look at the clock speeds that we're seeing for... Radeon 7.
Yeah.
It's certainly possible. Mm-hmm. I mean, at the end of the day, though, it's going to come down to yields. And what people need to remember is that, A, this is engineering sample.
Yeah.
And B, look at the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4. With the Xbox One, they had 1600 megahertz on the CPU and I believe it's 800 megahertz on the GPU/ESRAM. Then literally, because Sony's console was more powerful, Microsoft were like, uh-oh, and they clocked it to 1.75 gigahertz for the CPU. The GPU and the ESRAM, because they're tied, went to 853, and Sony almost the last second increased the amount of RAM on the system from 4 to 8 gigabytes. So what I'm essentially saying is specs can change up until the last second.
Yeah, that's very true. That is very true.
We'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, it's just going to be interesting. Ray tracing, I'm dubious on whether or not we'll see that this generation.
There's also a lot of push for backwards compatibility from Sony as well.
I want to see that from both of them. I mean, Microsoft have pretty much said that that's what they want.
Yeah.
Sony obviously have been a bit cagey with that in the past. But I think it has bitten them in the butt for the PS4. Mm-hmm. That was a big win for Microsoft. So I would really like to see PS5 backwards compatibility with at least the PS4. I know there's been rumblings of like PS3, PS2, but it's like that's a bit much. I would be fine with just PS4. Obviously the PS3 is a bit of an odd beast, so...
I think it's not that difficult for PS1, PS2. Even running it on the CPU, you could write an emulator very simply.
I mean, I'd love to see it, don't get me wrong. I mean, I've still got all my PS1, PS2 games just sitting, gathering dust, so that would be brilliant, but whether or not we'll see it remains to be seen.
I'm pretty confident we will.
So, you've heard some exclusive information about Navi recently.
Yeah, I mentioned some of it already.
Yeah, but maybe just touch on that a bit more.
So... there's been a whole bunch of information, but the biggest one is that obviously the GPUs supposedly are going to be costing around $300 for the RTX 2070 level of performance.
I mean, sign me up.
There's the fact it's going to be using GDDR6.
Yeah.
But once again, that was basically confirmed by AMD's own David Wang.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a prosumer variant as well as possibly a data center variant, which is going to be released.
Okay.
The high performance GPUs in Navi's lineup is going to launch next year, which apparently AMD are targeting NVIDIA's leading edge GPUs of now. So that basically means the RTX 2080 Ti levels of performance.
Right.
Of course, the counter to that is, if I had to be honest, the issue is that at that point, it makes you wonder what AMD are going to be facing from Nvidia, whether we're going to see a Turing refresh or Ampere or blah, 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 blah.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see a Turing refresh, to be honest.
Yeah. But other than that, I think Navi's in good shape. The only thing that worries me about the pricing side of the rumours, honestly, is that it makes me wonder if AMD would really do it. And the reason I ask that is, yes, they would score a huge win from the perspective of gamers.
Yeah.
And they have released GPUs that have been as competitive as, let's say, the 1080 before.
Yeah.
If you look at, let's say, the RX 480, it was roughly on par with the GTX 980.
Yeah.
And obviously they did that around the $250 mark.
Yeah.
So, it's not like they don't have a history of doing it.
Right.
But at the same time, you've also got a lot of their investors who are asking AMD to increase their margins.
Right.
And if you look at the prices of the RTX 2070, they are basically selling a GPU for not exactly half, but it's a considerable cut down from RTX 2070. Whereas if they raised the price to, let's say, $400 or $450,
yeah,
they could make a larger profit and still be undercutting Nvidia. That's the one thing that does worry me.
I mean, that might be what they end up doing. That it's around the $400, $450 mark, and that would still be pretty nice in terms of price versus performance, to be honest. So
I mean, I will say that statement I just made is not from sources, and it does go contrary to every single rumour and source that I've heard. But there is that nagging feeling of mine that makes me wonder, the dark side of it. Are AMD going to just say ka-ching?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we'll have to wait and see. I mean, either way, I think they'll end up undercutting Nvidia. It's just a question of by how much. I did think 300 did sound a bit low when I first heard those reports.
It's doable if you actually work out the cost of the silicon, the GDDR6, and blah 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 blah. It is doable for around the Well, obviously it depends on the quantity.
They are a business still at the end of the day, so there's other concerns to think about. We'll obviously have to wait and see what happens there, but I think Navi has the potential to be really, really interesting, and if the performance is around 2070 level, then yeah, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I for one welcome our Radeon overlords.
So I guess we should finish up with some of your thoughts on GDC, because you were invited there by Intel.
Yes, I was. So first things first, I do need to do a podcast with the guys over, not with Intel, but there was a group of us who got invited, and it's not part of the deal for me to go out to do a podcast with them, but it was really fun, and I met some really cool people, so we've all agreed to kind of just do a podcast together.
Okay.
And it's just...
Are you allowed to say who they are?
Yeah, but I don't want to put them on blast just in case they decided to not do it or something like that.
Okay.
If they can't make it and then they say,
Okay, fair enough, fair enough.
So
tell us more about what happened at GDC then.
Well, the first couple of days, I asked if I could fly out a little early because I generally get destroyed by jet lag. Mm-hmm. So I stayed with a couple of friends, not at the hotel. So basically, Intel paid for the flight,
right?
But the first several days were my own dime. So I was staying with some friends in actually I don't want to say the location because it's personal, but it was outside of San Francisco,
right?
And it was a really nice area. Because my first time there, I've been a lot to the States, but never that area. Mm-hmm. And then after that, obviously, went to San Francisco, which is where the GDC's held, and it was my first GDC. So when we got to GDC, I wasn't so much surprised at the size of it. I was more surprised at just how friendly and open and welcoming everyone was. And it definitely was one of those events where you need to go at least once so that you can cover it well next time.
Right.
Because it's not even like... Because the GDC is not in one building. It's basically, it's called the Moscone Centre.
Okay.
But there is Moscone West, there's Moscone East, and there's Moscone North.
Right.
So you literally have 3 different buildings, and it's not like, you know, they're a 40-minute walk away from one another. They're not that far. But, you know, you have to kind of be like, well, there's the food hall here, which is very important for me. And there's another food hall there, which is also important to me. Plus, you've got all of the other bits and pieces as well, like all of the different halls. And it was an amazing experience, and I really enjoyed it. And then, obviously, I actually attended the Intel Odyssey event, which I was speaking to Chris Hook of Intel and a couple of other people there. You know, Amy Barton and I, we were having like a discussion, and, you know, we said that the day afterwards, it was an organised chaos.
Right.
There was no, you know, it was interesting to me when Bob Swan got on stage and started to shoot T-shirts out at the crowd.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like an experience.
Yeah, you're just like, apparently Raja Kodori went on stage in the testing when they were kind of making sure everything worked. And he kept getting distracted, and he kept on pressurizing the air gun.
Right.
So, like, to shoot out the T-shirts, right? So basically, it got like pressurized, and then someone interrupted him, put it down. He came back, pressurized it some more, and this repeated a couple of times. And he finally shot a T-shirt out and basically like wrecked stuff in the distance.
Oh dear,
I was
funny.
very sad I did not get to see that.
Yeah.
But a couple of Intel people were kind of laughing about it. Fortunately, no one was injured or damaged or anything like that.
Yeah.
But it was just quite funny. But yeah, it was an amazing experience. Currently, I am writing a script which is Intel Gen 11 plus Xe, plus, you know, my overall thoughts and opinions. So it's like a 9-page script. So I've done the filming and now currently do the editing, which is what I was doing today.
Right. Well, I'm looking at the time, and I think we should wrap it up there because, I wanted to keep this about 30 minutes long. But it's been nice to do this podcast again. We've been saying for ages that we wanted to start these up again because we've been doing them every week for a while, and I don't know if we'll be able to do that again. But I think we should try and do it a couple of times a month, I think that's a reasonable goal.
Yeah. Especially on like a Sunday, maybe.
Yeah. Setup needs a little bit of work, but we'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah, we're basically sat right now to give you an image of how awesome this is. The setup,
the professional level that you're dealing with right now.
Right. So, I basically came around Amy's because we're going to watch the movies later, and the idea was that we were like, "Hey, let's just do a podcast."
Yeah.
And so there's currently a microphone sitting on a chair.
Yeah.
And we're sitting on a couch. So the professionalism...
Yeah, because I kind of realised shortly before Paul arrived that I only have the one chair, which is the chair for my PC, my computer chair, and obviously my sofa. So I was just like, So yeah, we've got the mic on the chair, and we're sitting on the sofa. So, 10 out of 10 professionalism. Maybe have a Discord or something next time, but we'll worry about that then. Anyway, I think that's us done for this video, guys. So thank you very much for watching.
Yeah. Thanks very much. Take care. See you soon.